I'm James, and I've been in China for 20 years. Why now is everyone coming to China? Well, today to answer that question, I have a very special guest from the United States, Cyrus Janssen, a YouTuber with over 600,000 subscribers. Let's meet him.
James, such a pleasure to be in Guangzhou and meet up with a fellow expat. James, combined experience, we've got almost 40 years on the ground in China, and I'm super excited. Thank you for bringing me to your channel. Thanks for coming down to Guangzhou, because this is where I hang out. And let's go have a little walk and talk. Let's go tell the people a little bit about our story today.
Okay, let's go. Looking forward to it. All right.
So, James, I first came to China in 2007. Actually, I think you and I have a very similar kind of pathway and story in the sense that we both came here, probably right after university, both 23 years old when we arrived.
I was 23.
Yeah, so same as me. So I think we're very similar. You're just about 4 years older than I am. So, we've basically almost came to China at the exact same moment of our lives. And it was very interesting for me because, I grew up in a household where my father was American and my mother is actually from Germany. So I grew up in the summer times going to Europe, and I had a much more open sense on the world. So I really credit my mother with this, is that she brought me to Europe as a boy. She brought me exposed to other cultures, other languages, and it was very instrumental in my life because in 2007, I had a job opportunity in Shanghai, China, and I had just graduated university. I had, 2 weeks later, I bought a one-way ticket to Shanghai. Never been to China, didn't know a single Chinese word, but it was the opportunity and the excitement. I remember thinking, wow, I'm 23 years old, no family, no commitments, total freedom, why don't we give China a try? And for both of us, taking that leap certainly changed our lives.
It did, and it was the same for me as well then. It was kind of quite accidental the way I came here as well.
Yeah.
Because I graduated, I did some extra courses at university, and I was 23 years old, and literally there was just one day our tutor came in and she said, by the way, it was kind of like a passing comment towards the end. It was kind of like, the British Council, maybe you've heard of them.
Right.
Yeah, so they're looking for recent British graduates to go to China to teach English for a year.
Yeah.
And really, literally before that day, I'd never considered, probably not even like leaving the UK. There are two reasons that brought me to Chongqing. I mean, at that time as well, nobody had heard of the city. Well, that's it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, I'd never heard of it. I heard a little bit about Chengdu because of the pandas, of course.
Right.
There were two things I found out that were quite interesting. One was that Leicester City Council, kind of the local governments of my hometown. Yeah, they've had some sister city arrangements with Chongqing in place since 1993, I believe. Yeah, and then literally, they asked me, do you like spicy food?
Yeah.
Yeah, because at that time they were sending graduates all over the country. It could be Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou.
Right.
Also some smaller cities, let's say, Qingdao, Fuzhou.
Right.
And
Yeah,
and they asked me, do you like, spicy food? And I said yes. Yeah, so I said, okay, send me to either Chengdu or Chongqing.
Nice.
Too many people wanted to go to Chengdu. So they called me back, are you willing to give Chongqing a try? So I just kind of said there and then, okay, I'll give it a try.
Nice.
And I thought, I'm just going to stay here for 1 year. That'll be enough. And then I'll go back home.
Yeah.
But maybe, I don't know if that was a similar story for you.
Very similar, actually. I mean, my first job in China was actually a golf professional. So I actually came to teach golf in China. I was working on a driving range, and I originally came on a 2-year contract. And at the end of my 2-year contract, I was very happy in China. And actually, I had experienced a really great opportunity because for me at that point in my life, I was 25 years old now, having been in China for 2 years. And at the time was right in the middle of the economic recession, the 2008 financial crisis in the United States. So there really wasn't anything to go back to. It was a very difficult time. And China actually, remarkably, was very stable during that 2008 financial crisis. Actually, for many of you who might not know, it was actually China that helped bail out the United States by buying a tremendous amount of security So I mean, without China, the United States wouldn't have gotten out of that 2008 financial crisis because they bought so many of the treasury bonds. A lot of people don't know that fact. But simply, the reality is that in my industry, which was in the golf and sports industry, that industry, of course, would be considered more luxury. So when the financial crisis is happening in the United States, of course, that business goes down. Meanwhile, in China, China was still growing. 2007, the GDP in China grew 14% in 2007 alone. I think 2008 was somewhere around 11 to 12%. So again, I mean, China was still booming. China was still in that rapid growth phase of nearly double-digit, GDP growth. Obviously, a different story now because it's a much more developed country than it was back when we first came. But it was incredible, and so for me, I immediately said, I want to stay here longer in China. I was then able to get a promotion to a higher job where I became the head golf professional of the #1 private golf course in China, which was actually called Shishan, and it's in Shanghai. Amazing facility, and I was able to be the head golf professional there for 5 years after that. Yeah.
How good are you at golf, personally?
Well, I am a PGA professional, so I am a pro, and I'm not the pro that you see on TV. So not, for example, like the Tiger Woods or the people that are playing on tournament television golf, but I'm definitely an advanced golfer that still plays a lot of golf today. It's definitely one of my biggest passions in life. So for me, it was just so much fun being able to do two things that I love the most was, being in China, learning Chinese, falling in love with this country, the people, the culture, the history, and then also being able to do it and grow the game of golf was amazing. And so some of my young students that I, taught when I first met when they were 6, 7 years old, they've now gone on to university in the United States playing golf, and we've had a couple of my students have gone to places like Stanford University, Yale University, and actually use golf as a tool to get into those schools and play, on the golf teams there. So it's been very rewarding to kind of see that come full circle, to meet these kids at age 6 and then now see them at Stanford University playing golf in the United States has been amazing.
Oh, I would have loved to have been good at a sports like that. I mean, I have a lot of passion for sports like football, but also particularly squash as well. Squash is a game that's always fascinated me. But, it's just very unfortunate I've never had the talent.
Yeah,
so I've never really been able to make it a hobby or anything like that.
It's all good. We all have our different talents, but I know that you've got a great talent in languages. I know you're very talented in that. So, and I think, James, how about you? How has China changed in your eyes? And, you've been over here for 20 years. I mean, and I know you've seen Chongqing tremendously change in the last 20 years, but what about your perceptions of China? Let everybody know a little bit more about what you've seen and how that's influenced your life.
Yeah, I remember when I first came, it was nowhere near as developed as it is today.
Right.
Yeah, and if I start with the scale of Chongqing, I mean, that's the city I'm most familiar with, of course.
Right.
I mean, I think the city was already a big city by Western standards in that year, but by Chinese standards, it was still fairly small and undeveloped.
Right.
Yeah, so I reckon in those years, I was based in the Shanghai district.
Yeah.
Yeah, because roughly the geography of Chongqing, you have that kind of peninsula that runs between the two rivers.
Yeah.
So I think most of it was concentrated into the Jiefeng area.
Okay.
And that kind of spread westwards into Shanghai, and then the south bank of the Yangtze River, which we call Nan'an.
Yeah.
The Nanbin Road and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was already quite popular in those days.
Right.
But really, apart from that, the rest of it was farmland. The city has expanded, so much. It's actually kind of gobbled up some of the former satellite cities.
Right.
But then, obviously, in 2003, Chongqing was still in that stage of rapid development.
Right.
So that also had a big consequence, on the environments there.
Right.
So I remember in 2003, just to put it bluntly, the air quality was terrible in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, all of these, old buses, ploughing the streets, they had these big plumes of, black smoke, coming out the exhaust pipe.
Absolutely.
Just everywhere you went, there were all these, construction sites, have these trucks, blowing up huge quantities of dust and all that.
Yeah.
So really, the environment, the city environment in those days was pretty bad.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
Chongqing still had a lot of redeeming factors that, kept me here, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're here in Guangzhou, and I mean, this is a scene for many of you. I mean, this is now commonplace throughout China. I mean, we've got beautiful blue skies behind us. We got the impressive Guangzhou Tower. And I mean, I've been everywhere from Beijing to Shanghai, Xi'an, out west to Chongqing, Chengdu, Guangzhou. I mean, we've seen a tangible result in the government's shift in really, moving away and prioritizing reducing this pollution. And China now, #1 leader in the world in renewable energy. I mean, absolutely astonishing lead in the amount of solar power that they're producing. Wind turbine power, astonishing lead. Obviously, goes without saying, I mean, absolute domination on electric vehicles, which are completely changing the world. And it's unfortunate because in my home country of the United States, we are blocked from, getting access to these Chinese technology. And, we've even had our politicians invent a word called overcapacity. Not invent the word, but basically use that word now to describe China, when it actually, in reality, overcapacity is the basic economics of simply a country producing enough to export. So there is no such thing as overcapacity. That's what basically exporting goods means, is that you're producing more than you can consume, hence you can export it. A great example would be Norway, overcapacity for salmon. They obviously export a lot more than they can eat. That's how that is a very booming industry for them. Unfortunately for the United States, we're going to be blocked from getting access to that Chinese technology. But when you come on the ground in here and you see 50% of the cars are electric vehicles, and then you go and see the quality of that, it's unbelievable. I mean, they have some of the most innovative cars. You're unable to, produce an electric battery, without the technology from China. And so there's just so many things I want people to really understand a little bit more about this country. And I think that's something that we can certainly do. And James, awesome job on starting your YouTube channel because, I spent 10 years in China. You're double that time. You're over 20 years. And you've got, I'm sure, an incredible amount of knowledge and experience that I think is going to be so valuable here on YouTube. And it's always great to get another, voice on the ground here in China to help spread this message and, definitely foster this message of peace and understanding and trying to get the world together. I think, you and I would probably be very aligned on that goal and trying to help people understand China. I always love China because, the Chinese people are so curious, people behind us, looking at the camera, they're always interested, but I think Chinese people are always very curious to learn about us, right? Hey, you're from the UK, what's it like? Hey, you're from the United States, what's it like? What do you think about this? And, our soft power, especially the United States, we have a tremendous soft power. So, our sporting teams, our music, our, brands, the Starbucks, the Apples, the Nikes, the McDonald's, I mean, they all have a massive presence here. So we have a tremendous amount of soft power in the United States. And I think, that's always been, a bridge. And I think that's, for me being an American in China specifically, I've always been treated very well here by everybody, not by only wealthy people or only successful businessmen. No, everybody on the, from the farmer to the businessman and everybody in between. Everyone is, very respectful, and you have really an amazing community where I think if you really come to China with an open mind and really come to experiencing for what it is, I think most people coming here would be pleasantly surprised. I think they might even be shocked on just, wow, I never would have imagined China was like this. And just to see how amazing the infrastructure is, how clean the streets are, how friendly the people are, what a great time you can actually have in China, and what a great quality of life you can have here as well. And there's just a lot of people that need to understand that. And, this is why we're excited to have these YouTube channels and kind of push this out.
In 21 years, I just feel part of the furniture here.
Yeah.
And some people ask me back in England, what's it like living in China? It's kind of difficult for me to answer because it'd be like somebody asking me when I was 23 years old, what's it like living in England? But it's difficult to answer.
My answer is to that?
What's that?
If someone asks me, what's it like living in China? I say, I tell you, but you probably won't believe me. Yeah. Because we have these certain stereotypes. We have these messages that are constantly, being touted in the media. I'll give you an example. I mean, we're not sugarcoating anything here. In the last couple of weeks, there's been 2 stabbings, prolific stabbings that have happened in China. I'm not going to say that, there's zero crime inside of this country, but just for reference, James, how many stabbings last year in the UK?
I have no idea, but I can assure you that there have been a lot.
Over 12,000 last year. So what was interesting, and my whole point in bringing that story up, is that Financial Times immediately ran a massive story there's a huge crime wave happening in China, okay? So, I mean, again, there's been 2 stabbing incidences in the last couple of weeks. What's interesting is you know, you have, again, in the UK where knife attacks are relatively common, over 12,000, you know, that's not national news in the UK. That's not gonna make a big deal. I mean, I come from the United States where, you know, homicides and gun crime is so commonplace that we've now changed the definition of a mass shooting, right? A mass shooting has to be 4 or more people because murders of 1, 2, and 3 people are so common. So again, this is just perspective, and again, it's, you know, we can, you can certainly write an article saying, oh wow, there's a massive crime spree happening in China because of these stabbing incidences. And yes, when you have 1.4 billion people in a country, of course there's going to be bad things will happen. On a national level with 1.4 billion, you know, statistically speaking, it's extremely low, and relatively, you can say it's an actual very safe country, and it's actually really all of Asia. I mean, all of Asia in general is actually, you know, pretty safe, generally speaking, China included.
Yeah, that's always been like my experience, and in Chongqing, whether out driving, out walking, parts of the city, any time of the day or night, you know, I've never had any problems.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, I think best thing right now is, you know, China is visa-free for over 54 countries around the world. So if you haven't been to China, now's the time to come. Visa-free for over 54 countries, including, you know, many of the Western countries in Europe. So I mean, we're not talking just small little countries, big countries as well, and it's exciting. And this is the best time to visit China.
Yeah, okay, so we've kind of made it back to the starting points.
Yeah.
And it feels like we've only just started, but I also have the feeling that this isn't the first time or the last time we're going to be meeting up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I really hope in the future we can like get together, maybe in Guangzhou or another city, Chongqing, somewhere else. And,
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I kind of really like this kind of, you know, natural, you know, flowing conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, share each other's experiences.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so
my pleasure.
We can do that more in the future.
Yeah.
When do you go back to the US?
I go back to the US, I think about Wednesday or Thursday. So got another 5-6 days here in Guangzhou.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the stay, and
Thank you so much.
I look forward to seeing you somewhere else in China.
Cheers. Thank you, James. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
All right.
Cheers, mate.
Catch you later.
All right.
Bye-bye.